I died for 17 minutes. By every medical standard, I should have suffered massive brain damage or never returned at all. But what Jesus revealed to me during those 17 minutes will change how you see everything unfolding right now and why time is running shorter than anyone realizes. My name is Dr. Michael Hassan. I'm an emergency room physician with 15 years of battlefield medical experience as an army medic. I've pronounced countless patients dead, watched families collapse in grief, and always believed death was simply the end, a clinical cessation of brain activity. Nothing mystical about it. I was wrong about everything. 3 months ago, I experienced something that destroyed 15 years of medical certainty in 17 minutes. What I'm about to share challenges everything you think you know about what's coming. Not in some distant future, but potentially in the next few months. It was a Tuesday night shift at City General Hospital. The emergency room was unusually quiet for a change. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt as I reviewed patient charts at the nurses' station. That's when the chest pain started. Not the dull ache you might expect from too much coffee and stress. This was different. Sharp, crushing, like someone had wrapped steel cables around my chest and was tightening them with each heartbeat. I knew immediately what was happening. Myocardial infarction, massive heart attack. The irony wasn't lost on me. After saving countless lives, my own was about to end in the very place where I'd spent years fighting death. The next few minutes happened in a blur of medical chaos that I'd orchestrated for others hundreds of times. My colleagues rushed me into Trauma Bay 3. I could hear the familiar sounds of emergency protocols, the sharp beep of monitors, the urgent voices calling out vitals, the metallic click of instruments being prepared. Blood pressure dropping fast. We're losing him! I felt the cold gel of defibrillator pads being placed on my chest. Through the haze of pain and medication, I could see the concerned faces of my colleagues above me. These were people I'd worked alongside for years, and now they were fighting to save my life with the same desperate intensity I'd once brought to their patients. The pain intensified beyond anything I could have imagined. It felt like my entire chest was being crushed in a vice while someone poured molten metal through my veins. My vision began to tunnel, darkness creeping in from the edges. The familiar sounds of the trauma room started to fade, replaced by an odd ringing in my ears. Then came the flatline, that continuous monotone beep that every medical professional dreads. The sound that means we've lost the battle. But here's where everything changed. Where everything I thought I knew about death and what comes after was turned completely upside down. Even though the monitors showed no brain activity, even though my heart had stopped beating, I was still conscious. Not in some dreamlike state or hallucination. I was fully aware, more alert than I'd ever been in my entire life. It was as if someone had suddenly lifted a veil I didn't even know was there. I found myself floating above my own body, watching my colleagues perform CPR. I could see everything with crystal clarity. The sweat beading on Dr. Martinez's forehead as she compressed my chest. The way Nurse Johnson's hands trembled slightly as she prepared another dose of epinephrine, the exact rhythm of the chest compressions that were trying to restart my heart. This wasn't some oxygen-deprived hallucination. As a physician, I know the signs of hypoxic brain damage, delirium, and drug-induced visions. This was completely different. My thinking was clearer than it had ever been. I could process multiple streams of information simultaneously, understand conversations happening in different parts of the room, even sense the emotions of everyone present. I remember thinking, this is impossible. Dead brains don't think. Dead consciousness doesn't observe. But there I was, floating near the ceiling, watching my own lifeless body being worked on by my colleagues. Then the environment around me began to shift. The harsh fluorescent lights of the trauma room started to fade, replaced by something I can only describe as living light. Not just illumination, but light that seemed to have consciousness, warmth, and intelligence. The sterile walls of the hospital dissolved, and I found myself in a space that defied every law of physics I'd ever studied. I was no longer in the hospital. I wasn't even sure I was still on Earth. The place I found myself in was breathtakingly beautiful, but not in any way I could adequately describe with human language. Think of it this way. If Earth's most perfect sunset were just a single note, this was an entire symphony of light that could embrace you with love. Colors existed here that have no names in any human language. The very air seemed to pulse with life and love. This wasn't a hallucination. I've treated hundreds of patients with oxygen deprivation, drug reactions, and neurological trauma. I know what medical hallucinations look like. This was completely different. And then I saw him. I knew immediately who it was, even though I'd never been a particularly religious person. Growing up in my Middle Eastern Christian family, we'd attended church occasionally, but faith had never been a central part of my adult life. Science was my religion, evidence was my God, but standing before me was Jesus Christ, and there was absolutely no doubt in my mind about his identity. He didn't look like the paintings in Sunday school books or the Hollywood movies. His presence was simultaneously gentle and powerfully overwhelming. When he looked at me, I felt like he could see every moment of my life, every thought I'd ever had, every secret I'd kept. But instead of judgment, all I felt was unconditional love. "Michael," he said, and his voice resonated through every part of my being. "You have been brought here for a purpose." I tried to speak, but found I could communicate through thought alone. "Lord, I don't understand. Am I dead? Is this heaven?" He smiled with infinite compassion. "You are between worlds right now. Your body lies dying in that hospital room, but your spirit is here with me. There are things I need to show you, truths you must carry back to warn others." "Warn them about what?" His expression grew more serious. "The world is about to enter a period of great tribulation. Events are already in motion that will reshape everything humanity thinks it knows about life, death, and spiritual reality. Most people are completely unprepared for what's coming." Jesus gestured, and suddenly the space around us transformed. Imagine the difference between watching a movie on your phone versus being inside the movie itself. Except this was infinitely more vivid. I could see images, scenes playing out with a clarity and reality that made them feel more real than my own memories. "I'm going to show you 3 signs that will appear before the great shaking begins," he continued. "These signs will be unmistakable to those who are watching, but most will miss them because they're looking in the wrong places." The first image began to materialize before us. I saw scenes of political upheaval, not just in one nation, but across multiple continents simultaneously. Leaders falling from power in ways that seemed impossible just months before. I watched as governments that had seemed stable for decades suddenly collapsed within weeks. "The first sign is already beginning," Jesus explained. "A great shaking of human authority structures. What men have built through pride and the pursuit of power will crumble. You're seeing this starting to happen now in your world, but most people think these are isolated events. They don't understand that these are connected, that they're part of something much larger." I watched in amazement as the scenes unfolded. I saw specific leaders, specific dates, specific events that seemed incredible at the time. Here's what still gives me chills. Some of these things have already come to pass since my experience 3 months ago, happening exactly as I was shown. Others are still unfolding. "But Lord," I thought to him, "how can I convince people this is real? How can I make them understand?" That's why you're here, Michael. Your medical training, your scientific background, your reputation for rational thinking, all of this has been preparation for this moment. You will be my witness to a generation that worships science above spirit. As someone who spent my career dealing in facts and evidence, I never imagined I'd be sharing something like this. But I took an oath to do no harm, and staying silent about what I witnessed would be the greatest harm I could do. Jesus showed me more details about this first sign. I saw how the collapse of these authority structures wasn't random chaos, but part of a divine plan to humble human pride and prepare the way for something greater. The political upheavals, the economic disruptions, the sudden falls from grace of leaders who seemed untouchable, all of it was connected. People will try to explain these events through natural causes, Jesus said. They'll blame economics, social movements, political corruption, and while these things play a role, they don't see the spiritual reality behind the scenes. This is my hand moving in human affairs, preparing the world for what comes next. As I watched these visions unfold, I felt a growing sense of urgency. The things I was seeing weren't abstract prophecies for some distant future. They were immediate, specific, and some were already beginning to happen. It was like being shown the script of a play while the actors were already on stage, except this wasn't fiction. This was reality unfolding in real time. But what Jesus showed me next made everything I'd witnessed so far seem small in comparison. As the first vision faded, Jesus turned to me with an expression of deep seriousness. The first sign is merely preparation. What I'm about to show you next will test the faith of even my most devoted followers. The second sign will challenge everything people think they know about the nature of reality itself. The images around us began to shift and change, and I felt my spirit tremble with anticipation and fear. Whatever was coming next was bigger, more shocking, more world-changing than anything I could imagine. But just as the new visions were about to begin, I felt a sudden, powerful pull back toward my physical body. The presence of Jesus, the heavenly realm, the living light, all of it began to fade. "It's not your time yet, Michael," his voice echoed as the vision dissolved. "You must return and share what you've seen. But remember, what I've shown you about the second and third signs will make this first revelation seem small in comparison." The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air in Trauma Bay 3, looking up at the shocked faces of my colleagues. According to their records, I had been clinically dead for 17 minutes. Brain death typically begins after 4 to 6 minutes without oxygen. By every medical standard, I should have suffered massive brain damage. Instead, I woke up with perfect clarity and memories more vivid than anything I'd ever experienced. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've watched in amazement as the first sign Jesus showed me has begun to unfold exactly as I witnessed it. But what he showed me next, the second sign that's already beginning to manifest, made my blood run cold. Because unlike the political upheavals that some might see as natural cycles of history, what's coming next will be impossible to explain away through conventional means. The second sign is already happening, and most people have no idea what they're actually witnessing. What Jesus revealed as the second sign was unlike anything I had witnessed in my years as an emergency physician. As someone who has spent 15 years in battlefield medicine and emergency rooms, I thought I understood the patterns of global conflict. But what I saw that night changed everything. The light around me suddenly shifted, and I found myself observing what appeared to be a massive military alliance forming. Jesus stood beside me, his presence radiating both urgency and compassion. "Michael," he said, "watch carefully. This is the second sign that time is running short." I witnessed Iran and Russia, two nations that have been drawing closer militarily for years, forming an unprecedented partnership. But this wasn't just political cooperation. What I saw was a military machine unlike anything the world has ever seen. Advanced weapons systems, shared intelligence networks, and a unified command structure that defied everything I learned about geopolitics during my military service. But this wasn't just political cooperation. This alliance, Jesus explained, will make them believe the impossible. They will look toward Israel and see not just a nation but a prize worth any risk. As a medical professional, I'm trained to recognize symptoms before they become crises. In the emergency room, you learn to spot the subtle signs that indicate something catastrophic is about to happen. The slight change in breathing pattern that signals organ failure, the particular look in someone's eyes before they crash. What Jesus showed me that night were the symptoms of a geopolitical condition that's accelerating faster than anyone realizes. The Iran-Russia military cooperation we're seeing today, the shared drone technology, the joint naval exercises, the weapons deals that make headlines, these aren't isolated events. They're the early stages of exactly what I witnessed in that divine vision. The most chilling part wasn't the alliance itself. It was the confidence I saw in their military leadership. Jesus showed me rooms where generals from both nations were planning with a certainty that made my blood run cold. I've seen that kind of dangerous confidence before, in patients who refuse treatment because they're convinced they're fine right before their condition becomes critical. They believe they have the technological advantage. They believe the timing is perfect. And they believe that Israel's current conflicts have left them vulnerable. But then the vision shifted to something even more profound. The third sign that made my hands tremble. "Michael, look at what they see when they look at Israel," Jesus said. And suddenly I was observing the region from a perspective I never could have imagined. What I witnessed was Israel in a state of abundance that seemed almost impossible. Despite every conflict, every challenge, every threat they faced, I saw a nation that had discovered something extraordinary. Jesus showed me advanced agricultural technologies that were turning desert into farmland, water purification systems that were creating abundance where there had been scarcity, and energy discoveries that were reshaping their entire economy. "This is what draws their attention," Jesus explained. "Not just the land, not just the strategic position, but the wealth that has been hidden and is now being revealed." The tears streamed down my face as I realized what this meant. In the emergency room, I've witnessed what desperation can drive people to do. Families fighting over a dying relative's belongings even before the patient has passed. But I've also seen what greed and opportunity can motivate when people think they can take what isn't theirs. What Jesus was showing me wasn't just Israel's future prosperity. It was what would make them irresistible to those who believe they have the power to take it. The vision became more intense, more vivid. I could see the decision-making processes, the calculations, the moment when Iran and Russia would look at Israel and see not an enemy to defeat, but a prize to claim. The abundance Jesus showed me, the technological breakthroughs, the resource discoveries, the economic transformation, all of it would become the trigger for the very conflict prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39. "This is why time is short. Michael," Jesus said, his voice filled with both sadness and determination. "These signs are not distant prophecies. They are current realities beginning to unfold." What I witnessed that night was not a dream, not a hallucination from my medical trauma. It was real. As a physician, I know the difference between reality and medical-induced visions. This was neither oxygen deprivation nor medication effects. This was absolute reality. And every day since, I've watched the news with a different understanding. Worry when I see reports about Iran's drone technology reaching Russia. When I read about new Israeli innovations that seemed to come out of nowhere. When I observed the shifting alliances in the Middle East. I'm not just seeing current events. I'm seeing the exact sequence Jesus revealed to me that night. As someone with Middle Eastern heritage and 15 years of military medical experience, I understand the complexities of this region better than most. But what Jesus showed me transcended everything I thought I knew about geopolitics and prophecy. These aren't just signs of end times, they're signs of our times. Right now, today, the urgency in Jesus' voice still echoes in my mind. Michael, those who are watching will recognize these signs. Those who are prepared will understand what's coming. But time is running shorter than anyone realizes.
I died that night so you would know what's coming.
Not in some distant future, but potentially within months, not years. Think about it. The alliance I witnessed is forming now. The prosperity that will draw their attention is developing now. The confidence that will drive their decision is building now. As a doctor, I've learned that when multiple symptoms align, you don't wait for the patient to crash before taking action. You act on the warning signs. And that's exactly why you're here right now. Something inside you sensed that we're living in extraordinary times. And now you know why that feeling won't go away. Everything Jesus revealed to me that night. The first sign of political upheavals already reshaping our world. The second sign of the Iran-Russia alliance building toward an unprecedented conflict. and the third sign of Israel's abundance that will trigger the final confrontation. These three prophetic markers have been placed before you exactly as promised. As a physician, I took an oath to do no harm, but I've learned that sometimes the most harmful thing you can do is remain silent when you possess knowledge that could save lives. That 17-minute journey beyond the veil wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who would hear this testimony and recognize the signs. The signs are here. The timeline is accelerating faster than anyone realizes. And if what Jesus showed me that night is accurate, and everything I've witnessed since confirms it is, then we're not talking about distant prophecies. We're talking about current events that most people don't yet understand. Think about what you've just learned. Political leaders falling in impossible ways. Military alliances forming that will reshape global power. Israel's coming abundance that will draw the eyes of the world. These aren't abstract concepts anymore. They're the roadmap Jesus gave us for what's unfolding right now. I've spent my career saving lives in emergency situations, and I can tell you that the most critical moments are often the ones where people have the information they need but fail to act on it in time. This message might be the most important emergency intervention I've ever shared. If what you've heard resonates with that deep sense you've had that something is shifting in our world, then you understand why this testimony had to reach you. There are others out there, people in your family, your community, your circle of influence, who have that same unsettled feeling about world events, but don't understand what they're witnessing. Those are the people who need to hear what Jesus revealed that night. Not everyone will be ready for this message, but those who are watching, those who sense something significant is building, they need to understand the prophetic framework that makes sense of what's happening. The next time you see headlines about military alliances in the Middle East, you'll recognize the second sign unfolding. When you read about technological breakthroughs or resource discoveries in Israel, you'll understand the third sign taking shape. And when you feel that sense of uneasiness about the direction of world events, you'll know that the Holy Spirit is confirming what Jesus revealed to me that night when I died and came back with a message for such a time as this. Your spiritual discernment brought you to this moment. Trust that same discernment to know who else needs to hear this testimony before time runs shorter than any of us imagined.